On today's episode of WorkWoman, we have Heather Monahan, who is a total boss. Well, actually, she is a boss in heels. Heather has a platform all about what it is like being a boss in heels. Her career track has been one of sheer excitement. She worked in the media space for 25 years and then got fired just a few years ago. And when she was fired, she used that time in order to pivot. And since then, she is a best-selling author. She has a podcast with Podcast One. She has many courses and has launched an incredibly successful speaking career, having interviewed people like Sarah Blakely. She is definitely living up to her title of Boss in Heels, and I am certain that you're going to enjoy today's episode. Heather, your story is so inspirational. For any of you who don't know what your story is, you're very open about your story. And on your website, I think one of the coolest features of your website is the timeline of like where you started and all of the amazing and crazy things that have happened along your journey. Will you share with the audience what your journey has been over the last like 10 years in your career?
Yeah, so I was in corporate America for almost 25 years and had made millions of dollars for many shareholders and responsible for managing hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of employees. Been promoted many times. I was ultimately a chief revenue officer in charge of revenues for a media company across the country. And after just being recognized as one of the most influential women in radio, a month later, I was fired when the CEO that I worked for 14 years became ill and he elevated his daughter to replace him. And so I took that opportunity to basically roll the dice on myself. I had never worked for myself. I'd always worked for a company and different companies along the way, but I'd always been employed by another person. And I took that opportunity to go to work for myself, write and self-publish my first book, Confidence Creator, which trumped for #1 in business biography on Amazon the first week it came out. Then I figured out how to launch a speaking career, and I got picked up by Harry Walker, GDA speakers, Big Speak, every major speaker agency. I interviewed Sarah Blakely live on stage in September in front of thousands of people. I mean, I've had so many amazing speaking engagements in the past year and a half since I started that career. I launched my podcast with Gary Vaynerchuk as my first guest. It's now number 17 on the Apple Podcast Entrepreneur chart. And it's just been this great ride. I signed with HarperCollins Leadership last week, and I have a new book coming out, Leapfrogging Villains, in 2021, in 1 year. So it's been this really exciting ride. And then when COVID hit, my #1 revenue stream was my keynote speaking business, and I had to pivot. And so I pivoted to a virtual speaking model, which I just gave a speech yesterday. It went amazing. I'm so proud of myself because it's such a bizarre new platform and new way to connect with people, but it went really great. And I'm a big into reviews and recommendations. I got great reviews from the event. I just booked another event for next week. And then I'd always been asked by my audience, can you mentor me? Can you coach me? And I travel way too much and I don't have time. But now that I'm on quarantine, I said, okay, rip and run. I launched a May 1st coaching program and mentorship program. It's sold out in a week, and I'm 1 week into it right now, and the feedback's been great. So I just live in this constant window of pivoting and evolving all the time now. It's pretty crazy.
And I love that you have the confidence to do it. So when you think about your career, the 25 years before you were working for yourself, it seems like it's like the sexy thing to say of just like quit your job and go pursue your passion full time. But there are some things that you learn through going through how to hire your first team member when it's not all on you. Like you were prepared for so many things when you were going out on your own. So when you think about the things that you learned that you did well, but then also the things that you totally failed at while you were in kind of a corporate structure, what advice would you have for people to like really hone that time to use it for being able to prepare themselves to start their new thing?
Well, I was just an overachiever. I always have been, and sales was kind of my thing. So I gravitated towards that at a young age. when you do anything for a long time, ultimately you're going to get really good at it, right? So when you have 25 years experience in something, it's not your first rodeo. You know the pitfalls, you know the ways to cut through to your end goal. And so I refined my craft, and I became very successful in sales and sales leadership. And that was sort of my lane and my space. And I just assumed that's all there was to it. I thought I was in this well-lit corridor, which ended at, the CEO position, which was my next move. I had run many companies up until this time. So I had the expertise, I had the experience, and I had a massive track record of success. The one challenge I had along the way, or flaw that I look back at that is so glaring, I was constantly butting heads with whoever was the CEO or whoever had the position ahead of me. And here's why. I was always wanting to innovate and, move fast to market. Speed to market is everything. And I wanted to bring new programs, products, procedures to light quickly. And in corporate America, it typically does not operate that way. Most traditional companies move very, very slowly. A great analogy would be turning the Titanic. It doesn't work out. So I just innately, who I am as a person, didn't fit in corporate America. However, I only knew of corporate America. It wasn't sexy like Gary Vaynerchuk sexy to be an entrepreneur back then. I'm 45 years old. 20 years ago, Gary Vaynerchuk, no one knew who he was. It didn't exist. And no one was talking about going out on your own. This was, in everyone's eyes, I had made it. And I thought that was all there was. Just my next position would be CEO. And it was a question of which organization would that be with. And I thought it was also clear and linear. And I've just learned that when you are an innovator, when you are a risk taker, a change maker, corporate America is not typically the space for you. I mean, maybe in some regards, you could look at a Facebook or a Google and challenge that concept. And there are unicorns out there, but the majority of traditional companies are not a place for a strong-willed person who wants to take risk and move quickly. So I learned that my flaws are actually my assets. I was in the wrong space and in the wrong arena.
How do you balance that with like hiring team members who work with you now? I would assume that you still want people who are similar to you, but that just don't quite have maybe the risk tolerance that you do to be able to go out and start something. Like you're not looking for corporate America-ish people, but you still want somebody who can take direction, that will be led by you, and that comes to the table with new ideas and better processes and ways to get work done.
Yeah, well, it's such a great time that we live in now. It's very different than 10, 20 years ago. The internet and social media has allowed for such a level of transparency, and testimonials and recommendations are the new verified blue check mark that everyone's looking for, right? So if you want to do any due diligence on anyone before you even have a conversation entertaining working with them, you go to their LinkedIn. And it's so simplistic to see who they are, where they've worked, how long they've been there, what their skill set is, what their reviews are on the site, and who they're connected to. And very quickly, you can get an assessment on who somebody is from a big picture standpoint. And you can't hide there, right? You can't create some false identity because people will call you out. That's the beauty of a social platform like LinkedIn, which is designed for business and business contacts. So it makes it much easier. We didn't have those things, 15, 20 years ago. So vetting somebody and essentially building trust took much longer. And that was the bigger challenge for me from a hiring perspective, was finding out who someone was, because you can work for an employer and not live up to your potential because you're being held down there, right? And so maybe someone would say, oh, you call for a review of someone's work. Well, they were okay, they did their job, but is that indicative of who they actually are? We don't know. You'd have to decide, do I feel a good connection here? Do I feel I want to take a chance on this person? Does this person serve a space that I'm not currently covering on my own? So it was very different hiring years ago versus now. It's much easier to find that right fit and plug those people in and have a higher chance of it working out because of the transparency now that we have due to social media.
And it's on the job seeker to do the information gathering, the research to make sure that the fit's going to be right. We were talking a little bit before this started about the situation that we have today with almost 30 million Americans unemployed. And so when you think about tips as somebody who hires employees, what would you tell people who are recently unemployed and looking to spruce up their online platforms, whether it be LinkedIn, Instagram, etc.?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things people can do. So, if you didn't do it 5 years ago, which would have been the ideal time, right now, today is the next best time. You've got to move quickly. This is a moment to pivot, not pause. Don't sit on your couch. When I got fired, I sat on my couch and cried for 24 hours. Give yourself that 24 hours, but anything in excess of that is a waste, right? It's okay to feel sad, but now let's get back to work and reboot and put this opportunity to work for you. There's two very different opportunities for people who have recently lost their position. One, go to work for yourself. And this can also be a bridge play. And frankly, it was a bridge play for me initially when I got fired. I thought, I'll try this thing and see what happens. If it doesn't happen, I'll go back to my sure thing, which is corporate America, right? That's how I got myself out on that limb and willing to take the risk, as I kept taking baby steps until it was very obvious. I was very far down the road and I said, I'm working for myself. I'm not going back anymore. I closed the door on plan B and just moved forward with plan A. But for anyone who's in that window right now of not knowing what to do both, right? So upgrade your social media profiles, pop up a professional picture, which is critical. Grab a great headline. Look at SEO right now and what are the words that you want to be known for? Be very precise, and that little small 2-sentence window is your marketing vehicle. I believe mine says keynote speaker, author, podcast host, whatever those things are that I want to be known for. That's your window to basically say why you, and draw people to you. Think about it this way. When someone's doing a search for a keynote speaker, I want to be found in that regard. So that's what's going to be on my tagline and headline. And if you're looking for sales executive, that's where you're going to put that keyword. Then it's really critical to make sure you've updated reviews and recommendations. That is without a doubt what the benchmark is. If I look at a potential hire and they have no reviews and recommendations, major red flag. I mean, you've got to start dialing for dollars. Call your old clients, call your old peers, call your old supervisors and ask, hey, you mentioned you wanted to help me out. And if I needed anything to reach out, I'm reaching out today because I really need you to go ahead and leave a review and recommendation on my LinkedIn wall. It would mean the world to me. When do you think you could get that up for me? Call people out. Everyone's real quick to say, we'd love to help you. Too bad we had to let you go. Best of luck to you. Let me know if I can do anything for you. Respond right away. Sure is there's something you can do for me. And ask for that review and recommendation of your work. If you have reviews that maybe people had sent you in notes, respond back to those clients on email and say, do you mind if I throw this up on a LinkedIn post talking about my skill set and what makes me unique? You need to really define and hone your unique value proposition. And one of the really authentic ways to do that is through other people's eyes and the power and insight that they give into what makes you so great.
How many reviews is enough reviews? Like, is 5 enough?
It's never enough, right? It's an ongoing process. I don't even know how many I have, but now I'm doing this mentoring program, someone sent me a review. They didn't know it was a review, but one of my teammates sent me a note that said, this is the most amazing program I've ever done, blah, 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 blah. And immediately I respond back, oh, thank you so much. Do you mind if I use this as a review and recommendation of my work as a mentor on social media? I'm always thinking in that regard, and you should be too, right? Because we're always evolving and changing our business. Did I want to become a virtual speaker? No. I thought I had it locked down as a keynote speaker and it was all set and exploding. It was going great, but it wasn't my choice that I went to quarantine. So now I need to amass reviews and recommendations as a virtual speaker because it's a different job than a keynote speaker. So I'm constantly asking for those reviews and recommendations. We always want to be rebuilding and adding to, because you never know what pivot you're going to need to take next.
And you get used to going for the ask. So many people, like with your background in sales, you're used to it, but many people are terrified of sales. They don't view themselves as a salesperson or even an advocate for themselves. So they don't get in the habit when something good happens or when something bad happens and somebody offers them a hand, to what you were just saying, like you've just been let go, they told that your company feels bad, ask them to do this and they'd happily do that. They're not used to even thinking in that way. How did you learn to think with that? Was that something that just naturally came, or was there a moment where you just realized that this is something that's available to you if you start asking?
Yeah, I mean, at 9 years old, I started a paper route. So I was asking at 9 years old for people's money, right? And I'm 45 now. So I've got a lot of time in asking. But you know, it's something that's interesting. And I had to be reminded of this the other day. So, number one, practice is what counts, right? The more hours and reps you put in, you want to be a great comedian, get on a lot of stages. You want to be great in sales, you got to ask a lot. And then you're going to learn which, oh, hey, this response works better. And when this person says this, if I respond in this regard, you start noticing things. You notice people's body language. You notice the inflection of their voice. All of these things are indicators steering you to a close. But to that point, and as many years as I've had experience, I was in a new arena. I had pitched a literary agent on representing me for my second book. And 15 times she sent me back to redo my book proposal. And I'll never forget, at the end, it was the 15th time, it was nearly a year of work on this book proposal. I said to myself, if this woman doesn't say yes on this one, I think I'm going to go find another agent. I think she doesn't like me. I think it must be me. Maybe this isn't the right fit. I started getting out of that mindset of the ask and the follow up and pivot and ask again, and started moving, gravitating away from. So that was not what a typical salesperson would do. I went back to her on the 15th time and she said yes. So it just reminded me again, you know, listen, it's not always that we have to find, you know, the reason why or why not, or what was going on in her life. I have no idea. That proposal had been good for last seven times I sent it to her, right? But for her, it wasn't the right time. I don't know what it was, but don't give up and go back for that one more ask, because it takes one yes. It doesn't matter the 14 no's. It takes one yes. And I got that one yes from that person. Who knows the reason why, but that started the ball rolling.
The ability to shake it off is critical in sales, right? You can't have the next client come in and keep holding on to, oh, this person just said no to me on this cold call, therefore this client's probably going to say no to me, therefore I suck. You can't have that. But learning the skills to just like, okay, reset, this is a new person, this is a new engagement, I'm going to bring my full energy, full attention to this one thing because this might be the right thing. Is there different ways in your coaching or mentoring women for how they can start to shake those feelings off in a faster way instead of letting it linger and potentially affect the next sell that they're going to do?
Yeah, that's funny. Listening to you tell that or make that point, I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't shake it off. If I was really flustered and upset about something that went, you know, way sideways and didn't go the way I had anticipated, and I was walking into a meeting, rather than put a mask on, I would have done that when I was younger. When I was younger, I was really not that confident in myself. And I would kind of, this is fine for a lot of people to do. It worked for me for years. You know, I would channel whoever I thought was a great salesperson and put that mask on and go in and try to smile and be really powerful. Today, I'm very different. I'm so raw me. If I was upset and flustered and I was walking in, I would say, and I didn't know the person, I'd say, listen to me right now. I need to share a story with you. Tell me how you'd respond to this. And I'd hit the person with what just happened. And I'll tell you, people really connect with that raw realness. If it really is how you feel and you share it and you're being your true self, and you'll get that instant connection from someone where they're going to say, oh my God, I feel so bad for you. That sounds terrible. Or they're going to laugh and say, oh, I love that you just opened this whole meeting with that, you know, but it's really going to break that ice. And for me, one of the biggest things about sales is connection, and allowing people to trust you and allowing you to understand and trust that other person and really hear one another. So if you can break through all that BS that, you know, their guards up because they know you're trying to sell them something, you're trying to look super smart and prepared. If you can kind of throw that to the side and just get real, for me, it allows for a much more honest dialogue.
Did that switch happen also when you were moving from selling somebody else's products or selling something on behalf of your corporate job to now you're really selling yourself in the business that you have with your books, with your courses, with your podcast?
I'd say I probably moved towards that even prior to working for myself, as I became more confident in myself and my abilities back in corporate America. However, I'll put the caveat, it's easier to do as an entrepreneur because when you are in corporate America, it isn't your own game. You're always going to get that look from your CFO or from the one person that didn't appreciate how loud you got in the meeting. Corporate America is just innately different. So there is this constant theme in most companies of being judged and stereotyped and criticized. And it's not always constructive criticism in the boardroom or in different meetings. And you have to develop in those arenas a thick skin. And sometimes I came to play attitude, which is not, I'm here to be me attitude, which is where I inevitably got to. And that's when I got fired. So sometimes the more confident, strong, and real you are, the more you might not be a fit for those rooms any longer.
And is that, I've only heard this story from secondhand, which actually was you on a different podcast that I was listening to. So you were in the middle of promoting the content that you were putting out from your personal brand. And was that kind of the excuse that your boss used to get you out of the role that you were in?
4 years ago, so I was still back in corporate America. I was a chief revenue officer. I had decided I'm making all this money. I've got this important job, but I don't really feel fulfilled other than when I'm with my son. There's got to be more to life than this. Mm-hmm. And through a number of different circumstances, I decided, okay, I'm going to start sharing my story that I grew up poor. I'm going to start sharing all of the tips and tricks, how to break the glass ceiling and get into the C-suite as a woman, rocking my dress and my hair down and my makeup and feeling good about it because I didn't have that role model when I was a kid. The leader or the people in the C-suite were white-haired men with blue pantsuits, and I couldn't relate to that. So I decided it will make me feel more purpose-driven, more fulfilled, and more that I'm serving and helping others, and hopefully helping others like me that I didn't have to connect with when I was younger. So I launched a personal brand 4 years ago. And immediately when I did that, it was essentially a website and taking my social media profiles public. No harm, no foul. Well, the CFO, my arch nemesis, who ended up being CEO, who ended up firing me, got on the phone with the GC and they conferenced me in and they basically threatened me. They said, you are jeopardizing your position here in the company as an executive at the company and in the C-suite. You cannot go out and do this. And I had done my homework. I said, guys, I've researched every blue chip company in the US and I'm looking at Bank of America's website right now. And their chief revenue officer has a personal brand and their chief revenue, and I just started pointing to, I'd done my homework. And I felt really good about my ability to, I'd spoken with an attorney with my contract. I was violating nothing. They just were not happy with me shining my light or me stepping outside of what they felt was comfortable for them. And that's about them. So I declined to shut it down. And anytime that you're declining the direction of a GC and CFO, you're gonna meet some bumps in the road. So for the next year and a half, they made my life a living hell. Anything and everything that they could do to sabotage me was put in motion. And it was a very difficult year and a half, but I'm a single mom with a very expensive lifestyle and I did not want to lose my paycheck. So I just figured, you know what, this too shall pass. I can ride this out. They're not going to fire me because I was so good at my job. I said, I'm just going to keep on going. I'll let them be over here and I'll focus on my priorities and my job here. Little did I know, it was chipping away at my confidence. I was feeling worse and worse. I ended up throwing my back out. I started losing my hair. The stress was really getting to me mentally and physically. And I'm such a focused and driven person. I just wasn't noticing it. In the end, I get fired and I start realizing all of those things. But that day that woman thought she fired me, I had just fired this villain in my life. And truly for me, getting away from her, getting away from someone that was always trying to stab me in the back, always trying to sabotage me and put me down, really allowed me to take off in a way that I never fully had before. And it's interesting because I had spoken for 20 years in corporate America. People had seen me at many events, and one of my past employees came to an event that I spoke at last fall, and he said, Heather, I've never seen you so powerful and electric as you are today. You've always been good at what you do, but it's so weird. It's on a different level. And to me, I know why that is. It's not a mystery. I'm finally free of that negativity, free of those people trying to set me up and sabotage me. And when you remove yourself from negative people that want to hurt you, you set yourself up to take off.
And you just go and you just keep going. And then all of a sudden you're limitless and you're signing deals with Podcast One and with Harper, and you're doing all the things that you've always wanted to do.
Absolutely.
So cool. I looked up some things that you say, and I would love to get your perspective on these. They're titled Heatherisms. So the first Heatherism: transform sorry into thank you. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah. I noticed this about myself when I was at Barry's. I used to work out at Barry's all the time, which, if you're not familiar, there's this, you transition from the treadmills to the weights and back and forth and amongst, a group of other people, pre-COVID, obviously. And I noticed that when I would feel great and powerful on the treadmill, and I'd be looking in the mirror, talking myself up inside my mind. But the minute I would transition to the floor and had to grab the weights, I was saying, excuse me, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, sorry, every time some man bumped into me. And then I'd be lifting the weights and just not feeling as good anymore. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. So one day I noticed I did it and I said, I'm not apologizing because some guy bumps into me. I'm done. So then I decided my first step into this, and if you're someone like me that apologized a lot for things you didn't need to, I would say, excuse me. And I would say it really strong too. And I started feeling like, oh yeah, people don't bump into me and expect an apology. That's over. And so slowly that transitioned to, if I showed up late to a meeting, instead of begging everyone, I'm so sorry, I'm late, I would walk in and say, thank you so much for your patience. I'm ready to begin. And I really transitioned from this point of taking blame and responsibility for everything to showing gratitude for others, for them understanding and moving forward with a better, stronger attitude.
I love that. It just changes the presence instantly. Like, you were late. Maybe it's because there's some silly reason, like, your alarm didn't go off, but maybe it's because you were reprioritizing your time to things that were more important. And you're not sorry that you did that, but you're thanking people that you acknowledge that they're being patient and that they've been waiting for you. It's like, it's, I love that. I think that's fantastic. All right. The second Heatherism: fear is a liar. You just did a clip on this very recently. Can you tell me more about what your philosophy is around fear being a liar?
Yeah. So growing up, I always was told, if you feel afraid, go home, hide under your bed or what, we're taught that as children, and just culturally, that's how I saw it, that if you feel scared, whoa, pump those brakes and don't go any further. What I've learned by just putting myself out there and walking into fear is it's not real. And in fact, it's a green light that means go and go faster. If you're not feeling fear all the time, you're never going to reach your potential. And let that be known, because for so long I sat in these meetings in corporate America, not afraid. No, I was stagnant. I wasn't growing. And I look back at my time in corporate America versus my short period, 2.5 years as an entrepreneur. I am constantly afraid. I was afraid to launch this mentoring business. I didn't have the website up. I didn't know how to handle Shopify and connect it to PayPal and connect it to this and a funnel. And I didn't know how to do any of those things, but I Googled it and I figured it out. And I launched the program without having the site up. And I started saying, why am I getting so scared about this? It's not real. I'm just going to step into it and own who I am. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, pivot and figure something else out. But when you start to run your life and your business that way, you move so much faster. You really become so much stronger and so much more solutions focused, instead of backing away from things and keeping things the way that they've always been.
Just because they've always been that way, but for no other good reason. All right. The last Heatherism: beating yourself up is overrated.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I would always, give myself a hard time, harder than probably anyone else would. But when I would get home, why did you do this? I can't believe you blew it. Jesus, you could have done better. I would truly talk to myself that way. And then when I got divorced was another one of these marquee moments where, why did I, marry that person? Or why am I letting my son down? And the more I would beat myself up, the worse I would feel. And I'll never forget a therapist saying to me once, right after I got divorced, she said, so how have you been doing? I said, well, I'm just beating myself up a lot. I'm really disappointed in my decisions and how I ended up here. And she said, yeah, how's that working out for you? And I started laughing. I said, well, not so great. I'm going to be honest. It's not going great. And she said, okay, what about trying a different way? And so my new way is listen, I still make mistakes all the time. I have the opportunity to beat myself up. However, I now choose to see it, okay, hang on, how would I talk to my son about this? If my son doesn't do well on a test, do I tell him, it's a horrible job and how dare you?
He's so stupid. No, of course not. You'd never say that.
We'd never consider saying that. So I try a different approach.
I was at a conference in the fall, and one of the activities that they facilitated was having you speak out loud to somebody else the things that you say negatively in your own head to yourself. And, it was a fairly emotional moment. And I'm not normally impacted by things like that. I was like, oh, this is going to be silly. I'm not going to care. But then actually verbally saying that there's so much power in speaking the things that you say to yourself because you don't even realize how terrible they are. And the fact that you would never say that to a stranger, much less your best friend, much less yourself, who you're supposed to be a good friend to yourself. You're supposed to treat yourself in a way that makes you want to rise and go after things, but you realize why people are so held back oftentimes if they're saying those things themselves while also on the other hand saying, oh, but you can achieve your goals and you can make this happen. It's like, which one of these things is true? Because this is not the same energy that you can commit to one person actually being able to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and that dissonance, right? That difference between who you really are versus who you are to the outside world. The more you can shrink that gap and bring those two together, the more powerful you become, the more confident you become. So that was such a great exercise for you to do. And it's so interesting. One of the things I noticed, some exercises work for some people, some don't have that impact or effect, but it's all about getting out there and trying different things and meeting different people and putting yourself on those different stages to see, wow, that was the moment I finally get it, right? It just comes, that epiphany moment comes for you when I guess you're ready to see it. That's great.
For sure. I also saw a clip of you speaking. Like the first part of the clip was you speaking from 10 years ago and it was on a teleprompter. And then it was fast forwarded to your speech. You gave a TEDx talk this past fall. And just, the 10-year transformation that you've made. What was your speaking journey like? Did you listen to a lot of other speakers and try to figure out how they were doing it and try things out for you? Or did you just kind of fumble through it?
Yeah, so that's so funny. That was a post that I did right around, I guess when the new year changed. It's so funny. I had to go back and find that footage. The funny part is I thought I was so good that night. And now when I look at it, I'm like, oh, that is so painful. But I love that for the point that everyone has to start somewhere. I had started years before that. That just happened to be, that was audience. There was 10,000 people at that event. It was the National Association of Broadcaster, some like 50th year or whatever. It was this huge event for me. It was the biggest event I had ever spoken for. I was sweating on my feet. I was so freaking nervous. And it was just a disaster debacle when I look back. However, I'm super proud of myself for taking that stage. I'm still so proud of myself because every time you take the bigger stage, it doesn't really matter how you do. So what? The moment's over. People are on their phones anyways. No one's going to remember, but you'll remember, like, I had the courage to get up there and do that. I can do the next thing. So I look back with a lot of love for myself when I see that clip, even though it pains me to see it. But just to let the truth be known, that was a decade ago, but I had spoken since I was 20. I've been in sales leadership roles since I was 22, was the first time I was a sales manager, and I've been in management leadership since. So for 2 decades, I started speaking then because when you're a sales leader, you have weekly team meetings with your account executives. That's how I started. So it started with a group of whatever, 10 or 15 account executives, and I would stand up and lead a team meeting every week, which that's a speaking engagement. It's practice. And so every time you stand up and you're giving a speech and you have to freewheel it and you're not reading off a teleprompter, you're developing that ability to improvise and speak freely and own a stage and have a presence. And I'm sure, I don't have footage of those meetings, but I'm sure they got better over time. And then my audiences would get bigger and then I'd get promoted. And then it would, I'd speak for the marketplace when I would go to Michigan and there would be 400 people there and I would get up and speak. And then it became on stages for different events, and there'd be 1,000 people, so it's all these little tiny baby steps when you look back. And the in between was the weekly meetings I did every week, no matter wherever I was, small or large audience, it didn't matter. So it's putting those reps in. And then I started working with charities about 10 years ago, and I started speaking for charity events. So that put me in a new arena where I wasn't as familiar with the material, which was really helpful. The more you take yourself out of that norm and get out of just that media circle I was in, that was really helpful to say I could do this in a different environment, in a different arena with different people. And then you just keep growing and growing from there. So it was definitely not an overnight experience. And I've never been so scared in my life as I was to give my TEDx talk. And that's after 25 years of speaking. So I guess my point is that you've got to start somewhere. The key is to start today. The key is to start with just speaking up in a meeting. The next time, you're in a meeting, raise your hand, contribute your thoughts. That's your first speaking engagement. Start somewhere. And the next time, ask if you can share your idea. And the next time, pitch yourself for advancement and promotion, and then start leading the team meetings and know that you're on that path. Your path doesn't have to look like mine. You could decide a year into it. A great example, a really strong female speaker, her name's Kendra Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Ben, do you know who she is?
Oh, yeah, I do. She spoke at our events about a year ago.
Oh, good. Okay. So she's great. She's been on my podcast, but she went into the speaking business without a business acumen, without a stronghold in anything. She just decided, I'm going to be a speaker and I'm just going to start telling my story and what's important to me. So she did the complete opposite of what I did. And so my point is, you can just go be a speaker and go her route. That works too. I didn't do that. I look back now and I wonder why I didn't. Because they got, speakers get paid a heck of a lot more than what a lot of those positions are that I was sitting in for years. So it's really up to you. You can either put the reps in and become more confident before you put yourself on the big stages, or you can be like Kendra and just go for it without that other experience and try. It's up to you to define what does that path to success look like for you.
I think that's what's so cool about social media. Some people really focus on the comparison piece, which is huge, and I get that. And of course, I've felt that many times. But social media has so allowed me to find people that I would have never known and to look at them from afar and say, this is what I love about their life. And even if I never know them, it still raises my belief lid about what's possible. So I don't have to do XYZ in order to be a speaker. I can just be a speaker. I have to find one person, Kendra, who's done that, and then I can follow that path. Or it can be, I want to be the CEO of an organization, but I'm 30 years old. Okay, I find one person who's done it and I look at what they did, but you don't have to pick full-blown mentors or role models. You can find just pieces and put that together for your own story. It doesn't have to just be one holistic view.
Yeah, it's so true. And just following whatever that path is that you think is best for you, not what worked for somebody else.
Totally. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast. Where can people find you? You obviously have the coaching program, but it sounds like there might be only a couple spots left in that.
Well, I'm doing this one's is completely booked out, but I'm doing a new one for next month, as well as I have a video course. I have free programs, a free accountability program, a free ebook. I have my book, Confidence Creator, my podcast, Creating Confidence, and you can find all of that at heathermonahan.com.
Guys, go follow her, go stalk her. I totally did all of the things. She is like by far somebody that I will be putting things on my list of things that I want to be able to create for my life. And thank you so very much for coming, joining, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Oh, I can't wait to